Chapter 18. On my first night in West Africa, there were 2 declarations in an area that had had none for some time. I can summarize Africa with 2 accounts which speak for my whole trip. In Togo, as we rode on a motor scooter kilometer after kilometer in the blazing sun, I asked my host if we could perhaps stop at the next village and sit in the shade for a half hour since we were early. We did so, and of course, as we pulled up in the shade, some children and a few adults gathered around. No one spoke English, no one spoke Spanish, no one spoke French. They just spoke Ave. I began to sing that little song about clapping your hands, stomping your feet, and saying Alawapa. Soon the entire village was under the tree singing, and I will never forget the picture as we left after our half hour of rest. Every man, woman, and child standing with their faces filled with happiness and light, singing that African melody of Alawapa and waving goodbye. Yes, for me, that tells you about Africa. One other incident that took place in Africa I would like to share with you. I met a pioneer couple in Nigeria. They were practically children, but oh, what children! These are the real children of the Crimson Ark, the kingdom of Abha. The man had finally received his degree in education, and they wrote to the appropriate committee saying that they would pioneer anywhere in the world he could get work. This committee replied, explaining that it would be better if a little experience was secured first. They got jobs, apartment, and so on. Then, with all details settled, their names came up for pilgrimage, and off they went to the land of their heart's desire. There they met the members of the Universal House of Justice and told them of their pioneering plans. After consultation with this body, these stalwart warriors of Baha'u'llah went to the airline, traded in their return tickets to the United States, and bought one-way tickets to Lagos, Nigeria. Surely, here are the most beautiful examples of courage, dedication, and I lay all my affairs in thy hand. On the airplane, frightened, not knowing anyone, they were praying when a stranger walked up. Where are you going? He asked. Lagos, Nigeria. What are you going to do there? Look for work. What kind of work do you do? I am a school teacher, said the man. Thank God, the stranger exclaimed. I work for the largest American school in Nigeria, and we are desperate for teachers. Thus armed with jobs, apartment, and car, they were anxious to get on with their only real work, namely the service to the cause of God. They contacted the local Baha'is in Lagos, and every night prayed together for guidance to reach the hearts of the people. Then came a letter, I don't know where from, advising them that I was coming and would show them how to teach in mass conversion areas. You can well imagine the excitement attending my arrival. It was agreed that what we needed to start with was a place not too near the city, plus a good interpreter. We can read and then talk about the pure-hearted African Baha'is, but until it is seen and experienced, one has no idea of the reality. Everyone with faces as radiant as the sun and those shining eyes, the windows of the soul sparkling like stars. My heart swells and throbs with such a deep, tender love for them by just remembering. Peter, one of many such true believers and soldiers in God's cause, said, Let us go to my village. It is out of town and I can interpret. How far away is your village? I asked. About 300 miles, he replied. Thus it was settled, and with the car filled with prayer, song, and meditation, we sallied forth to learn about mass conversion. As we prayed, our hearts throbbed with love for one another, and as we sang with all the enthusiasm of our hearts the praises and glorifications to God, the car no longer even touched the road, as mile after mile sped by. At lunchtime we stopped in the shade of a small village, and I set out to give the beautiful message of Baha'u'llah to the people who gathered. Some school teachers invited us back to tell them more about this new and beautiful message from God. I explained to my companions that we need go no further, as here we already had opened a village. When people invite you to return so they can study and give their names and addresses, that town is surely open to the cause of God. Many times, the ones that at first show interest do not accept, but always God guides us to those hearts He wants. However, once again, my African brothers, with love, joy, and laughter, would listen to none of my suggestions to turn back. They loaded me again into the car, and off we floated to our destination. Upon our arrival, everyone but Peter and I went off to the center of the village. We stopped at the chief's house, a relative of Peter's, to pay our respects, get permission to hold a meeting, and arrange to spend the night. The chief was delighted, and, being a very intelligent and highly educated man, he even offered to help with the interpreting. As we left his house, I said, "Come on, Peter, let's go this way." Peter, with eyes dancing, replied, "But Caldwell, that is the long way to the center of town. I know, I grew up here." "Come on, Peter, let's go this way anyhow," I insisted. Finally, as one would concede a whim to a child, Peter, with his great good nature, started off with me in the wrong direction. As we walked on, we met 3 most beautiful women, so tall, so straight, so elegant, walking away from the center of the village. "Oh, Peter, Peter," I cried, "please invite them to the meeting." We stopped, and Peter asked them. They turned right around and went with us to the meeting place. Before the meeting, I prayed with all the fervor of my heart and soul. Please God, this couple has given so much, and these, my soul brothers of Africa, are so on fire with the cause. Show them the way to win thy victories. First, I gave the message as truly, clearly, and simply as I could. Then I opened the meeting for questions. How wide awake and alert was my audience, with my heart throbbing with the love of God and love for these, His children. After every question, I would say to myself the greatest name, and then answer. Praise be to God that I had obeyed my guardian and studied the Quran, for many here were Muslims. It seems with each question I instinctively knew whether it was a Muslim, Christian, or Juju who asked it. At first the chief translated, then later Peter. For 5 hours the questions came. At the end, one man stood up and said, "With all that question you just answered, for the first time in my life, my heart has been satisfied regarding God and religion, and I wish to belong to this faith." That night, we had 9 declarations. Then, for 3 more hours, at the home of the chief, I talked to him alone. As nearly I can remember, his words were, I would be turning my back on my Lord Christ if I did not accept Baha'u'llah. This made number 10. We were just up and about in the morning when one of those beautiful women we met on the road the evening before came to the door. She declared, "I stayed up all night and prayed, and I know this is true. I accept with all my heart, and so do my entire family." Of course, we explained that her family must come and declare for themselves. She assured us that on our next visit, this they would do. Well, if we floated in, we had no words to describe how we got out. What tongue can voice my thanks to thee? These were only 2 instances, and we could recount 100, all different, all beautiful, wholly spiritual, which took place in that illuminated continent of Africa. I went on to Iran, then Haifa, for the election of the Universal House of Justice, then back to Mexico, where I was privileged to help construct the Amelia Collins Institute in San Francisco, Ecatepec, in Puebla State. I was director of this school. Every day was an experience, every student a jewel of great price, only needing to be polished in the deepening waters of Baha'u'llah's ocean.